Hey, welcome, guys, to Pastors After Dark. My name is the Dan, and we have another episode for you tonight. We're going to be tackling a topic that I think is actually going to be near and dear to lots of gamers' hearts and streamers' hearts. And so, thanks for the raid, and welcome if you're just joining us. Hop in here. My name's the Dan, and I am a full-time pastor at a church here in California, and I'm joined by a couple different people tonight. Let me introduce them real quick. Let's see. I've got Ferris Storm. Ferris, introduce yourself real quick.
What's going on, guys? I am streaming tonight, but I'm also excited to join the conversation, figure out this whole question about Christian streamers. Like, we do that. Are we doing that right now? We'll figure that out, right, Dan?
Yeah, well, I think we're doing that right now.
Okay, well,
Also joining me tonight is, or joining us tonight is Dr. Heels. Heels, tell us a little about yourself and the role you're playing tonight.
Yeah, hey, welcome. How's it going, guys? Glad you're here. I'm also a full-time pastor. I'm a youth pastor and teaching pastor, creative pastor at my church. I'm also a YouTuber and Twitch streamer. Tonight, I will be the gatekeeper. So if you guys have any questions at all, especially the really tough ones, go ahead and send them in. Just tag me at Dr. Heels, and I will make sure to pass them on to these guys.
All right, guys. And then join us tonight as a guest who I think is going to be a great expertise and perspective on Christian streaming in general and gaming is our friend across the crown, a.k.a. Chris in real life. Chris, introduce yourself.
Oh,
Hey guys, my name's Chris. I do go by Cross the Crown online. However, I just create content. The way I go about it is I'm a Christian who happens to create content, play a lot of Call of Duty, go into games with randoms, talk to them about who Jesus is, what he's done for us, and yeah.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. In
nice.
fact, I've been joining your streams. I've been watching. I think I was in the other day when you were like, I got to talk to 10 people about Jesus, and you're chasing people around Warzone, trying to VoIP them. With obviously mixed success. That was great, man. Appreciate it. That was cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. So a couple things tonight. As you join, you can throw your comments in chat, and then our gatekeeper is going to be grabbing those and writing them down. That's Dr. Heels. You can tag Dr. Heels in chat if you'd like, and he'll be collecting them, and then we'll try to answer questions throughout the show as we go along. We'll probably take a couple different sections where we kind of catch up on questions and answer those. And so throw them in there, tag Dr. Heels. You can at him right now if you're looking for him. And then as we go, if you would like prayer for anything, you're going through something, you just feel like you need prayer, man, we want to pray for you. We want to encourage you. We believe that the call of every Christian is to encourage one another, to lift each other up, that you were never meant to do this life alone, that it was God's intention to do this life with other Christians so that the difficulties and the trials of this world would not feel like they were overwhelming, but that you'd have people to lean on. And so if you would like us to pray for you, us to encourage you, you're just going through a tough time. You're not even sure you want prayer. Hey, let us know. We'd love to talk to you about it. That's our job and that's our passion. We all are in a Discord called GMA, which is God Mode Activated. It is a Christian Discord for gamers, and we actually have lots of gamers in there that aren't Christians, and we have people in there that aren't gamers, and it doesn't really matter. We want to hang out with you. We want to encourage you. We want an opportunity to speak truth into your life, and we believe that Jesus loves everybody, gamers included. No different. We're image bearers of Christ, and we have a message we'd love to share with you. And that's really about what God has done in each of our individual lives, and I would love to encourage you with that. So, with that said, here's our topic for tonight. I think it's probably in the stream title, but our topic is really around the idea of Christian streamers, and we're really, I think, looking at some of the main platforms, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, kind of a more recent phenomenon, and we wrote it. Actually, you know what? I'll get into it in just a second. Let's start this way. Let me ask Dr. Heels to pray for us, and we'll kick this episode off.
absolutely.
Heels, would you hook us up, man?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Father, we thank you so much for this day, Lord. I just pray that you'd be with us as we have this conversation. God, I just pray that you'd be here and that you would speak through us, that you would use us. God, I just pray that if anyone comes to this stream today questioning or not knowing you or just far from you, Lord, I just pray that your Holy Spirit would draw them closer to you, that through our words, through our actions, God, that they would be drawn closer to you. I pray that you'd help us to speak your word and speak your truth, Father. And I just pray for each and every person here. I know that life gets difficult and life gets hard. God, I just pray for you to be present, that you would give them comfort and peace and strength during this time, Lord. And I pray that if they're here and they're hurting, God, that they would reach out, Father. We love you and we trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so
Absolutely.
topic. It says Christian streamers in the title. Here's what we mean by that. Here's what we want to talk about tonight. What's the role of a Christian streamer? And I think even that term is actually going to have some different definitions. How should Christians approach these various digital platforms around gaming and live streaming? Is there like an appropriate way to do this? Is there an inappropriate way to do this? And like, what's our responsibility as believers on this digital platform? Like, what is it we're here to do? And maybe what is it we're here not to do? And so I'm going to start with this topic, and I'm going to ask Ferris, but we're going to go in a circle here and just kind of ask everybody: is there more than one reason, if you're a Christian, to be streaming on one of these platforms? And let me start it this way: why do you stream, Ferris?
Yeah,
And do you
yeah.
think there's more than one reason? How about that?
So I started streaming out of a response of seeing streaming, like video game streaming really hit the main market as Fortnite started to blow up. So I knew what Twitch was. I remember watching it a little bit before 2017. I started a new job in April 2017, and my kids were all about Fortnite when it came around. Jumped in, and then they're starting talking about watching people. I'm like, where are you watching at? And I'm like, man, this is a really cool marketplace of ideas and entertainment when I came to Twitch. And then I didn't see believers. I honestly think, let's see, 2017, this is right before like people really started to go crazy, blow up. At the time, the only quote unquote Christian streamer I saw was Tim the Tatman. And
All right.
this was still when Tim played Overwatch.
Yep.
And if you remember Tim the Tatman Overwatch days, you'd be like, is this a Christian streamer? Like, so I like here's really where I started streaming and what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a place online where I could play video games because I love video games, played them all my life, and where I could share the gospel. And it wasn't just for students, but my students were there primarily. But it was a place where I was like, hey, here's an awesome place that I can go and reflect the hope of Jesus Christ by doing something that everyone else does. Just like the other millions of streamers that are on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and everywhere right now. But when I started, I went even a step holier than Twitch. I started on Mixer. Let's just pour one out for Mixer.
For the homies.
For the homies, the good days. But that was due to like physical capability restrictions. But I started there and found community and found people joining and found conversations about anything and everything. My whole mentality is that I create content for the non-believer. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to have conversations with people who don't believe. Like, I love when believers come and hang out, but the content's not for you. What I mean by that is not that like I'm not doing shock and awe. I'm not doing hot takes or anything like that. But I also I don't do family friendly streams. I don't do family friendly content. Not because I'm looking to curse or anything like that, but like the people I play with don't know Jesus, and I just want to have conversations with them. So what I used to do primarily was like jump into Fortnite chats, play with people who didn't know Jesus and hang out, and then have conversations with people in chat about anything and everything. But my whole heart was to be a place where like true centered gospel lived and was accessible.
So for you, the primary reason to click that stream button was an opportunity to share the gospel with someone that wasn't a Christian. That's for you.
Correct. It was not to become like Christian Ninja. I was not wanting to do that.
Okay.
It was if I could just share the gospel.
You'd have to dye your hair to be Christian Ninja.
I mean, I had green hair because I was in student ministry.
Yeah, no, we're fine.
Okay,
we're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I met all the requirements.
Yeah. Heels. Why stream for you?
I mean, it was clearly for the fame and money. I mean, entirely it. No. I got my start on YouTube. I started making content on YouTube 5 years ago with my channel, which was at the time called That Bold Life, and it was all about living a bold life for Christ. And then I eventually ran into Jeff Evans. But around the time that I was focusing on YouTube, I was growing my YouTube channel. I met this dude named Jay in a Facebook group for Christian YouTubers, and we all teamed up and we made this like collective Christian YouTube channel where we're gonna make a video a week. And I don't know, it died quickly. But I met Jay, which you guys know him as Super Shadow. I met Jay, and he started telling about his main platform, which was Twitch, a place for gamers. And they kind of went in one ear out the other. It sounded cool, but wasn't something I was ready to get into. I was focused on YouTube, doing my like devos and Bible teaching, stuff like that. That's what I was focused on. A year or so goes by, and then I go to this youth pastor conference, and some dudes were there talking about how they use video games to reach Jesus. And you guys know them as Love Thy Nerd. And so they were there talking about this ministry that they're doing, and that my ADHD kicked in, and so I started hyper focus on live streaming. And I had a whole other debacle to go through. As you guys know, I have terrible internet. I'm streaming from a Verizon hotspot at this very moment because I live in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. And so I had internet issues. I started out streaming on 480 at 5 a.m. Because I was a morning person back then. Now I'm a morning person just on the other side. And so anyway, I started out, the main purpose at that time is I came in thinking that I was going to be one of two Christian streamers. I was going to come and share the gospel with gamers that didn't know Jesus. Also came in not knowing anything about what I was doing. And so for the first long time that I was streaming mostly to nobody. I take it back. I actually made a few friends in the Guild Wars community before I found a dude named Dustin who invited me to GMA, and it's just kind of flipped everything on its head since then. But yeah, I came over to Twitch, over to streaming, reach gamers for Christ. And it was, through Dustin and Shad, I met this whole Christian streaming community, which has been amazing. It's had its ups and downs. There's some, toxicity in that community as well, but it's an amazing community, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Awesome. Chris,
Yes.
why stream, man?
Yeah, so I found myself having way too much free time playing way too many video games about a year and a half ago, maybe a little less, probably 15, 16 months ago. And I was just playing way too many video games, and I was convicted about asking the question, why are you doing this, right? Whether you eat or drink, the most mundane things in life, right? We're supposed to do those to the glory of God. So if we're supposed to do the most mundane things in life to the glory of God, where does video games fit into all that, right? And I was really convicted by that. But over the last probably 6 months before I really started asking that question, my best friends in a group of Bible study guys that I've been doing Bible study with since COVID's happened, and none of us were able to hang out in person, and we were all over the country, met through video games. Some of us through soccer, which I used to play, and they're just like, hey, Chris, you should go and start streaming. You should tell people about Jesus in the game. And I was like, yeah, haha, funny, nice. But we really, I eventually was like, yo, if I'm gonna sit here and play video games for 7 hours a day outside of soccer practice, right? No, maybe not 7, but 4 or 5, genuinely way too many video games for someone who is trying to just live a life glorifying God. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna play video games, at least stream and maybe talk to people about Jesus while I play. If they want to come in the stream and hang out, and maybe I could talk to them about Jesus, right? Really quickly, I figured out that nobody's going to want to come in and talk about Jesus with someone they don't know about. So I was like, all right, so if that's the case, then I'm going to go talk to people in the game about Jesus. So I started doing that. I did that for the first time in October of 2021, and posted that on TikTok, got 8,000 views. I was like, oh, this is so cool, right? Oh my gosh. And then the third video I posted hit 199,000 views, and people started coming into stream. So now it wasn't just me going into games with random people talking to them about Jesus, but it was a small group of people hanging out. And then when I hit the off season, I had a little bit more time to spend streaming and content creating and stuff like that, and just kind of propelled the community to where God has it now. So yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
TikTok famous Jesus lover. That's the perfect title. Yes, you've been renamed, Chris.
I love it.
So a couple things. two things, because I want to answer the second part of the question, which is, are there more than one reason to stream? But for me, it was a little bit the same, a little bit of the opposite. Like I got into this really big Discord that was primarily focused around a single game, which is called Escape from Tarkov, about 3 years ago. And I was new to PC gaming and new to that game, and it's a really high learning curve. And so I just started to hang out, and what I began to realize that it was that in that Discord it was big. It was about like a 2,000 person Discord. And in that Discord, I began to realize, like, I'm pretty sure I'm the only Christian in here, or maybe one of two or three. And so about the first year, I just continued to build a lot of relationships, and every single person was not a believer, didn't know anything about Christ. And so I found myself in spiritual conversation after spiritual conversation, just over and over again in the course of about 12 to 14 months or something like that. And Tarkov is a difficult game where it's a very auditory game. You have to listen really, really well to play that game well. And so I couldn't have like a ton of people like sitting in a Discord channel talking to me. So I could have like 2, 3 maybe at the most. Even that was kind of hard. But I had a lot of people that wanted to. So I just found myself with 6, 7, 10, 15 people wanting to talk about life. And I don't know that it was always about Jesus. I really think it was just the hope of Christ that I got to talk about. Like my life is hopeful because of what Jesus has done for me. And most of the people I met, their life was not hopeful. It was rough. There wasn't a reason for hope. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. And so I became kind of a magnet where I just had people trying to get in my channel, my little Discord channel all the time. And I realized, like, man, I can't handle this. I'm missing opportunities to talk to people. And if you guys have ever read, there's a workbook. It came out in the 80s. They've revised it a couple times. I highly recommend a workbook called Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. It's been around a long time. I've been through it 3 times. And one of the things that Henry Blackaby says is that when you begin to see spiritual things happening, spiritual conversations, spiritual questions, people are asking you and opening the doors for conversations, it is God revealing himself at work in the world. And when God is revealing himself at working in the world, it is actually an invitation to you to join into the work that he's doing. He doesn't have to invite you. It's a privilege that he invites you into that work. And so I just began to realize, man, these conversations are an invitation by God to do something in this community, in this Discord. And so I went from a guy who didn't PC game to being the server manager of like a 2,000 person Discord. And I'm like, man, how did that happen? And I was struggling with, how do I have more conversations per session of time that I could give to gaming than I can have in a Discord channel, because it's too much. And so I realized I could try streaming. Like I would have people potentially come into chat and ask questions that I could answer via sort of one-way text that I couldn't do live. And it worked. I turned it on, and next thing you know, I had 20 people in my chat asking questions, and I'm answering them. And then the whole like Christians showing up in my chat thing was not really intentional. It just sort of happened on its own when I met people, and they were welcome because they kind of softballed out questions. So they'd be in chat, and I got a bunch of non-Christians in there, and one of my Christian brothers would throw a question in like, "Hey man, why Jesus, bro?" And like I'm like, "Oh, thanks," and I'd get to talk about it, So that's why I streamed. I streamed out of what I felt like is a necessity of God moving and me wanting to respond to it. The second part is there more than one reason to stream for a Christian streamer? I think yes. I think you could want to make a career out of content creation. And that's a reason, like a job, whether you call that a side hustle or a hobby or a goal, right? And then I think there's wanting to make it a ministry. And I think then there's all of our stories, which are a little bit the same and a little bit different. So I don't think there's one reason that Christian streamers get into streaming. What do you guys say to that?
I'd agree with you. I mean, I've been blessed to have some amazing conversations with people who are much bigger streamers, much better looking people than the people sitting here. Like, they have so much more influence on just modern day culture and the way people think about their game and the way people play their games and stuff like that. I've been blessed to have those conversations with people, and we might not even necessarily see them doing ministry, but at the same time, through the conversations I've gotten to have, they're doing some sort of ministry, right? Like I've who was it? Paul Washer, I think, was talking about. I listened to this thing from Paul Washer talking about how there's this big canvas that God uses to restore creation back to what it's supposed to be, right? Or redeem all of creation, right? And some people, he uses big old brushstrokes, right? That he used to paint on this canvas, but no great painting was made with big brushstrokes, right? You think of the Mona Lisa, right? Some are just like really small brushstrokes, and some people God has placed on this earth to make these really small, very what would be looked at as minuscule brushstrokes, right? And even those minuscule brushstrokes are a part of the beauty of God redeeming all of creation back to Himself, including His people. So I'd say absolutely, you can do it in so many different ways.
It's awesome. What do you guys say, Ferris? Heels, go.
Yeah,
I
mean,
go ahead. You go ahead, Heels. Go ahead.
Okay. He called us the same time.
I
You
know.
know what's going to
It's
happen.
the same time.
He did it on
Let's
purpose.
go.
He did. He set us up. No, I mean, I definitely agree. Like, I am one that I think that if you're a Christian streamer, content creator, I think your content should look different. Like different than the rest of the world. I feel like that when people interact with you, they should recognize there's something different about you. And one example that I love of this is Sean Cannell. If you guys you work on YouTube at all, you know Sean Cannell and Think Media. And this dude is a legit believer, like he's hardcore in his faith, but not his content isn't Christian content, right? His content is for everybody. But you can just tell like there's something different about his content. Like he's made videos on like, you know, how we can grow on YouTube using principles from the Bible. And he's had stuff like on his personal Facebook, like he shares scripture and stuff all the time. So like, I think that you can do that you can turn this into a career like you would any other career. Like, I mean, there are, you know, police officers out there that are Christian that obviously do their job differently than non-Christians, but they're also not, you know, out there preaching every second of the day. Like every person they pull over, they're not, you know, so I get that there could be multiple reasons, but I do think that if we are doing it, we should look different than the other content creators.
Ferris?
I mean, so we look different than Han. I'm stuck on a cable under here. I can't move my chair. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we should look different, but we should look different in everything we do, not just in streaming, in our life. Like, right? Like, I mean, what's the worst statement that we were told in the mid-90s that you shouldn't even have to tell people about Jesus for them to know that you follow him?
It's the fake Saint Francis of Assisi quote, Ferris.
Yeah.
You preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words. It's not actually a real quote, but
classic.
Yeah, punch me in the face with that. Just ignore Romans 10. It's fine. I don't read the Bible. But I mean, like there should be an evidence of our difference as a result of the overflowing nature which now is in us, which comes from and is only found in Christ. So, like that should be the mark of a Christian. That everything we do is bathed in the gospel. Our reactions, our choices. Our decisions is bathed in the gospel. And I know a lot of us probably even here, depending upon the games we play, like sometimes we get hate on the games that we play. And like there's a whole other conversation with that. Like, you know, you're playing Escape from Tarkov, right? Very brutal,
NC-17, man. I got to turn off all the language. I have a Russian character so that you can't tell when he curses because none of us speak Russian.
Nice. That's smart.
That's real.
Right?
That's real.
Or I play Fortnite, or I played a whole bunch of Call of Duty, or Destiny, or anything like that. And then we're like, well, why do you get that? And then we're like, well, hey, we're bathed in the gospel. We're playing this game. And there's whole other conversations. But we should look different. I think there's a difference though in what you said. Often, not always, often, in people who see this as an opportunity for the advancement of the gospel, and people who see this as an opportunity for an advancement of their career, right? I think those content foundations where they start are sometimes different, or I'm gonna say are often different, not always. Because I know we all have friends who are like Christian streamers who love Jesus, who are unashamed about talking about the gospel whenever it comes up in their chat. But their purpose of streaming isn't primarily the gospel first. Like, hey, I'm not here to preach a sermon or anything like that. Like one of our dear friends who's like primarily like all gospel, we're here to build Christians and develop them. Like that's Pastor Deucin. His content is all Jesus, even when he like plays retro video games, right?
Right.
Like that's what it is.
Like he's praying for Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah, well, he's praying for his own soul when he plays Echo the Dolphin. But then we also have other Christian like streamers who I have no hate against, who are like, yeah, hey, I'm a Christian, but that's not very primary in my streams. If it comes up, I'll talk about it. But like, I'm not looking for the advancement of the gospel as a main factor in my participation of what I'm creating. So, those are different.
So I mean, I would agree. Like, I think there's different reasons, and I think because there's different reasons, that means two things. One, the tone in terms of like specific content is going to be different depending on your reason. So, for instance, if Dustin's a great example of somebody that wants an opportunity to do what is essentially biblical streaming. I mean, he's streaming reading the Bible, he's streaming explaining the Bible, and so if I'm judging his content, then of course, I would expect to see a lot of the Bible. I don't stream specifically to stream biblical content. Most of the time I'm streaming a game that I'm playing with people who are non-Christian. And most of the time that I'm playing with them in order to do life with them, and that's just how they do life, talking to them, listening and asking how their life's going, so that hopefully at some point, and it may not be in that stream, I've earned an opportunity for them to listen to me. I'm earning their trust by proving that I care about them and their life. And it may take me 3 months of working with them for them to care enough to listen, but it works. And by the way, that's just ministry of walking with people, and that's how evangelism works. You prove to people that you care about them. Like people do not care about what you have to say until that they actually know that you care about them.
Well, I think you're like, you're hitting, like that would be the type of content that I like to produce, right? Like that's the type of content that I like to produce. But I think like what I was talking about is where's the foundational motivation for streaming, right? Like the content that you and I produce isn't just Bible, right? Like we're not just playing, or like even like Cross the Crown over here. I'm sorry, Chris.
There's a lot of C's going on.
Okay. But like, you know, Chris is playing video games and has the opportunity to talk about Jesus in those moments. Like he gets invited to the opportunity. But I think our foundation is still, hey, Jesus is our ultimate goal. Glorification, edification, proclamation, like that. We're all here to bring to those conversations. I think there's a difference from some streamers who sometimes use Christian streamer as their moniker, but like are pressed to talk about the gospel.
Let me ask you then, is that okay? Like if the foundation for you streaming is to make an income, I mean, real honestly, right? We all work, we have jobs. Like if the reason for you streaming is making an income, is it a problem if someone has to, if someone says there's not enough gospel in your stream?
Nobody's ever going to be fully satisfied, though. and no, this is why.
No,
and
say it.
Like, because this kind of, I dual stream TikTok and Twitch, right?
Yeah.
And on TikTok, right, I'll be like, hey, trying to talk, like on my title thing, I'll be trying to talk to randos about Jesus, right? And for 15 minutes will go by, right? And I'm just playing the game, talking to chat, having a good time, right? Just conversations isn't directly talking about the gospel in that moment. And someone will go, hey, like I've been in here and like, or does this guy even talk about Jesus? And like my sarcasticness wants to come out and be like, yo, you can press the back button or click on my profile picture and figure out what we do, right?
Right.
Like you can figure it out really easily, but nobody's ever going to be fully satisfied, right? People are going to say Dustin talks about Jesus too much. People will say that, you know, these massive Christian streamers don't talk about Jesus enough, right? They're these massive streamers who happen to be Christian, because I think this is also a completely different conversation. Is are you a Christian who happens to stream, or are you a streamer that happens to be a Christian? And I think those two different things are completely okay. And I think
that's what all tonight is about. What is the role of a Christian streamer?
Right.
Yeah, and like I have friends that that I've met that have, I mean, like right now he's probably got 900 viewers right now, and he's playing
Right.
Call of Duty, and you know, you look at his stream and you go, okay, there's something like there's probably something a little bit different about him. Like he loves people, he loves his community well, but like unless you were to be able to get in a direct conversation with him, it's going to be really difficult. Like there's guys out there that like I've been able to talk to him a little bit, and he's like, "Yo, bro, like I'm almost convicted by the fact that I'm not able to share Christ, or I'm not sharing Christ enough these days." And he's built this platform without like being this open Christ sharer, right? And
Right.
I'm encouraging him, like maybe like the people you play with, these other massive streamers, like they definitely don't know Jesus. Like you can tell in the midst of their attitude. So maybe your place isn't to go and proclaim Christ in this massive way to all your viewers, but maybe it's to be the person next to the person who's actually so far from God and just love on them and continue to be there for them and stuff like that. And share with them Christ when they ask, because his dad passed away from cancer when he was 12. And it's like, okay, how do you like be there for the people that are in that circle, because there's need to be people that are reaching those people as well, those lost big streamers that their circles are so tight that there needs to be someone to get in there. Maybe that's what God's calling you to do, right?
Right.
And people would, a Christian would maybe watch his stream and be like, okay, there might be something different about him, but why is he talking about Jesus a lot, right? Like what, like he has this massive platform, why is he talking about Jesus? Because maybe that's not where God has him, like has called him to be. Like, and it might be really hard for people to wrap their heads around that, because they're like, oh, go share the gospel, go share the gospel, go share the gospel, right? But like there are people who are missionaries to go to the far nations that will spend 5 years without actually telling people that they're Christians, but they're rather learning the language, learning about the culture, like creating a company, right? And then they just trust that over time conversations about Jesus will happen.
Well, and they happen naturally, right? We would call them opportunities. So I preach full time, a full time vocational pastor. I preach to a fairly large church. I probably preach 2/3 of the Sundays in our in the pulpit, plus discipleship, plus leadership development, plus elder development, plus staff development. Right? I mean, I'm preaching the gospel and discipling people 6 days a week. And I get on stream, and it's my opportunity. My largest exposure to the lost is in the Discord that I'm in. Most of my circles are Christian people, right? So I have Christian friends, I have Christian family, I have Christian coworkers. I'm surrounded by Christians, and then I get into my Discord, and that's the one place I really have life with non-Christians. So no, every 5 minutes, I'm not going to be like, Jesus loves you, bro. Like, I'm building a relationship with them that is genuine, and it better be real. It's not fake. Like it has to be real. I have to know about them, learn about them, love them, like legitimately love them, so that when there's an opportunity to talk about the gospel, I can. And I don't artificially talk about the gospel. So I don't set a timer in my stream. Like 15 minutes is up, and I start blurting out to read some verses. I have a verse of the day. I have bots that pop up in stream and talk about different things. I have automated stuff in chat that says, please ask me these questions. And then I have really great friends that get into chat and kind of lob up softball questions about biblical things, so that I have a natural opportunity to talk about it. But otherwise, I'm not trying to force that down their throat. I'm trying to love them.
Yeah.
And trust that the Holy Spirit will do work for those that he's going to call to him and regenerate. And then I'm going to be here walking with him when it happens. So yeah, I think there's a difference. Now, here's where I would say the flip side of that is someone asks you that question, gives you that opportunity, and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's scary to me. That's the flip side. So yes, I think you can have a stream that is largely just casual and playing games and loving on your community and sharing hope. And then when you get an opportunity, you can share the gospel. And when you don't, like, you don't have to pound them over the head like a street evangelist. I'm not holding up billboards like, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Repent. I mean, that's not my stream. And I don't do that on the streets either.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you do that though on April Fool's Day?
Oh my God. Probably. Yes. Yes. I get a billboard and stream it.
But there's some validity to, I mean, the two different points, right? So 100% what you said, Dan, is that like, right, like people have to know you care, especially in 2022. Like it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant of how much you know. Like no one's going to listen to you unless they know that you actually genuinely care, that they're living human breathing with hurts and hopes, and they want to be able to share them even if they 100% disagree with you. Like nobody's going to listen to you until they know you care. But like, like a couple people in chat, Ken even is going like, hey, you can't serve two masters, right? Like that's the mentality of going like, hey, you can't just be kind to people to Jesus. Like you can't be super nice to people in hopes that they get to Jesus. And then you think about Romans, a little bit of like Romans 10, but you also like, I'm thinking about like, right, like the famous magician teller's quote, like how much do you have to hate somebody to not tell them like what you believe is their only hope of eternal life, joy, and happiness. Like, right. And if you believe that eternity is really in the balance, then why would that be the paramount message and purpose of every relationship, right? And this is coming from a very outspoken atheist.
I would agree about relationships, but what I would say is, let's say you viewed your stream as a job. Let's just say you viewed it as a career, a job, right? In your job, now we're in ministry work, but if I've held a lot of secular jobs. I was bivocational most of my career. I was in the secular work field, and then I was bivocational. I've only been full-time vocational staff for a year. So most of my life's been lived in the world. I didn't walk around my sales organization that I worked in technology every 15 minutes and be like, Jesus! And be like, you have to hear it. If you don't hear it, man, I'm not doing my job. No, I have a job to do in sales and technology, and I don't get to just yell Jesus through people's doorways. Like, I got to be intelligent about building relationships and proving that I love them. And when I have an opportunity, what does 1 Peter 3:15 say? 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts, honor Christ. Always honor Christ. The Lord is holy. Always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that is in you. But what is that? What is that? It's a reactive, responsive defense. I'm living a life that's different so that when I have an opportunity, then I can explain. Hey man, is there any hope? Yes, thank you for asking, right? But I'm not running around shoving it down your throat, bro. Like that's nutty.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Like, as a former like professional soccer player, right? Like, everybody in the locker room knew who I was, like knew who my identity was in, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean everybody in the stands knew what my identity was in, right? And I think that's okay. Like, because I'm not going to be able to have a one-on-one conversation with every person in the stands. I hope and pray that the way in which I perform on the field and the way in which my language is like that, people would say like, oh, there might be something different about him, right? And like if they're interested, they go to my Instagram and stuff like that. They can track me down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to have that opportunity. Like, game's over. Hey guys, just if you didn't know, Jesus died on the, like, I'd probably there's a chance I might get fired, right? Like, like, there's a chance that I find a note in my locker the next day and you don't have a job, right? And then I lose my witness to all the other 20 other guys in the locker room, right? Because that's the people God has placed me around. Those are the people I can actually have a real relationship with. And those are the guys that I want to impact. Right. And yeah, like that, like it doesn't mean that everybody in the stands who's watching necessarily needs to know, but my hope and my prayer for those who are Christians and bigger streamers, I'm talking 500s, thousands, right? That even though the people in the stands might not have that ability to know, because even though these chats are going fast so quickly, like most of the time they don't even see 99% of the messages. Like what if like my prayers for those guys who have these massive audiences, that rather the people around them would be built up and know who Jesus is, and know that they know who Jesus is, right? Because what if instead, like, oh, we're focusing on that one guy proclaiming the gospel to 5,000, right? What if we focus on that one guy, hopefully and prayerfully proclaiming the gospel to the 5 other guys, then collectively, right? Maybe one day it just comes out on stream and there's 50,000 people that get to hear about Jesus, right? Like, I don't know what it looks like, right? But like, that's my prayers. Like, my prayer while I was a soccer player wasn't so that the people in the stands were to be able to know I'm a Christian, but the people around me would know I'm a Christian.
Yeah. Well, and like, I've had an opportunity in the Discord that I'm in, the community that I'm in, to get a lot of questions privately that not they won't even, people aren't even ready to have
Yeah.
in chat, right? I'm getting private
Yeah.
questions about like, man, my husband wants a divorce. What am
Wow.
I supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Or like, hey, I don't think there's any hope in this relationship, and I mean, those types of questions, and then sometimes they'll come into chat, and I'll have an opportunity to talk about them, but sometimes it is simply the fact that I'm living a life that has hope. And look, people know. If you're not embarrassed by it, if you're not ashamed of it, there doesn't need to be a timer on it, because people know.
Yeah.
And like I play more gaming in my Discord, not on stream, than I play on stream, with people in the community, all lost. And because of that, and because now I have a reputation of just living this life the way it is, when people are in my stream, they're apologizing, not in my stream, my Discord, like just in the channel, they're apologizing to me when they curse.
Yeah.
And I'm not live. I'm like, bro, I'm not live. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, see, that's an impact
Yeah.
of living a life that is righteous and holy, and people know there's something different. And so I got people apologizing because they just recognize something's different. And to me, that's salt and light. Salt and light is, it's so different. I know it's different. You didn't have to yell Jesus at me for me to know it's different.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. Let me ask this. Should a Christian streamer desire to get big? Ferris.
Yeah. There you go. That's it. Next.
Oh, okay.
No.
Heels.
No.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. Like, again, this deals with discipleship and where you are with your walk in your faith and how mature you are and things like that. I mean, because like, think about Paul's journey within the gospel. Like, Paul's goal was to get to Rome, to get to Caesar, to get Christ to the world, right? So Paul used the system that he was in, which was being a Roman citizen, to get arrested, to get abused, to sit in front of Caesar, to proclaim the gospel. Like, his goals weren't small. They were monstrous goals through his movements and his actions and everything like that. Like, even when like they're praying in the jail in Philippi and the Lord opens all the doors, he's like, no, I'm good. I'll stay. I got an appointment I need to keep. Right? Like, Paul's purpose for gaining affluence and influence wasn't to necessarily grow himself, but for even greater opportunity to share the gospel. And I think some of the most successful men I know are like monsters of industry and expertise and CEOs. And their whole goal is to go like, the Lord has placed me in this position of such great power that I can be an influence of the world for the gospel. And then what they do is you may not know names, but they know other CEOs. And just like what Chris is saying, like, right, like, nobody needs to know in this like gigantic company and everybody that watches the company that they're believers, but the CEOs that he meets with like once a month to get breakfast, like, he's asking them and pouring gospel into their lives to be able to ask questions, to be able to guide them in hopes that they shift and change their companies so that the gospel affects them. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to get bigger. If you're like, again, what are you seeking glory for yourself and for the Lord? If it's for the Lord, go for it. Like, go for it.
So you just gave us like a fairly big disclaimer on the yes, they should want to get big.
Yeah, for like, build your glory for the Lord.
Oh, okay. So not just they want to get big, that'd get big only if it's to glorify God.
I mean, it's the whole question of why do we do anything as Christians? Is it for self or for Jesus? It's not.
I think
it's not quantified.
I just think that's dangerous, man. I was guys like, I bought this $30,000 Harley. And I was like, dude, you're in debt and you haven't paid anything off and you can barely pay your bills. Why you buy a $30,000 Harley? He's like, it's for the Lord, man. I have a great conversations when I drive this Harley around. People want to talk to me about it. I was like, okay, bro, come on, man.
Look, look, my son asked
No,
me a
he's on to
question.
something. He's on something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this now.
Yeah. Like, my son asked
He's
me
like,
a
I want a
question.
Harley.
Yeah.
My son asked me a question today, like right before bed. And my son is 6 years old, and he's just now really starting to like understand the gospel and what Jesus did. And we're still trying to work on like what sin is and like, is he sinful and how that works? But he asked me, he goes, Dad, can I pray to Jesus for superpowers?
Oh.
And I go, yeah, of course you can. And he's like, but will he give them to me? I go, he might. And he goes, but
Hasn't
like,
so
will
far.
he? Right? He goes, but will he? And I go, well, it probably depends on why you're asking. Are you asking for superpowers because you want to be really awesome and super strong and fly or teleport or be a ninja for yourself? Or do you want to do these things so that Jesus can be made known more in the world? Like, what is your motivation? Like, right? He goes, probably for myself, Dad. I go, yeah.
This is an honest 6-year-old man.
Love it.
Right. I think that's with anything, right? Like to the guy that said I bought a $30,000 Harley and I'm in debt and I gotta, make payments and I gotta figure out how we're gonna feed or keep the lights on. Like I might have a conversation with you privately and be like, but was it for the Lord?
But was it?
But I don't know. You don't.
Heels, should you want to get big?
So I think it depends. I'm gonna put a maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, so here's my thought, and I'm going to go back because I never really responded to the thing earlier, and say that I didn't respond because I'm landing somewhere in the middle on that one as well. I'm kind of with Ferris. I'm kind of with you guys. I just have a hard time imagining like having a big audience and not sharing the gospel at some point. But that is just I feel like that's my calling. I'm not saying that's everybody's, but that's me personally. But I think that. Yes, like if your goal is to be on the internet and to share the gospel and reach people for Christ, I think that you wanting to get big is pretty normal. Obviously the bigger you get, the more people you can reach. But that is also assuming as you grow, you're going to continue reaching them with the gospel. But I also think that there is power in staying small. Right? Because like once you get so big, just like Chris was saying a moment ago, the chat's scrolling so fast, you no longer have those connections. Sometimes you can reach people, we've mentioned already, you can reach more people by staying small. In that you can reach more people because you can have more one-on-one connections, you can have more relationships, you can actually play with everybody in your chat. And not to mention, like sometimes we need to go into like the more niche areas. Right? Because everybody, there's several Christian streamers in Fortnite and Call of Duty and Overwatch. But who's going over to like Stardew Valley and like Magic the Gathering and like these smaller games where you're probably not going to blow up and go full time, but there are people there that need to know Jesus too. Right. And so I think that might come off as a sacrifice itself because you're going into a smaller area where you're probably not going to blow up, but you still can have those one-on-one conversations and those discipleship moments where you can reach people for Jesus. And they need it just as much as the Fortnite players and Call of Duty players. So I kind of think it depends.
All right. Chris, should you want to get big?
I'd say maybe, but if you're gonna say you want to get big, are you gonna actually work as if you want to get big? And actually want to glorify Jesus. Because I think I'll be honest, right? And I haven't even said this publicly, I don't think, but I think I've seen way too many people in the Christian streamer and content creation space say, I want to get big, but I've looked at their body of work and I go, okay, you're just talking it. Like I can say words too, right?
Right.
I can say I want to be a big influence for Jesus, but not actually do any work for it, right? I'm not humble enough to actually sit down and analyze my work and say, hey, it's not good enough. Right? Like just as if you're an accountant and you want to be an accountant for the Lord, right? You got to do it good. And if you don't do it good, like let's be honest, like we got to be able to humble ourselves enough and be able to go, all right, guys, I need help. Right? Like one of the biggest things I do is I reach out to people who aren't necessarily Christian streamers and I go, hey, like where am I messing up in the content creation space? Because as much as I want to be a Christian content creator, if I'm not a good content creator, nobody's going to want to watch Christian content. Right. There's part of it in mixing the magic of like, hey, making good content, but making it about Jesus, right?
Right.
The reason that people like Mike Winger and Alan Parr and now Ruslan and Living Waters, well, the reason that they've gotten big on YouTube is one, yes, they're glorifying God, but at the same time, they've worked their tails off to get to where they are, right? They've understood the algorithm. They've understood how to actually make good videos. And if we're not humble enough to go, hey, I'm not going to actually like look and see if the content's actually good, right? And like look at the objective numbers and say like, oh, my content's good, but the numbers are low, right? Like, objectively, by the viewer standpoint, they are not good, right? So are we gonna, like, if we want to say, hey, yeah, I want to be big, but not go seek help, right? Like, last thing I'll say on this, I've seen way too many Christian content creators say, hey, I want to make good TikTok content. I've maybe had 3 reach out to me, right? 3 reach out to me, right? And like, not like, God has done something special through the content we're making, right? Like I say, all glory goes to God. Every edit, every clip that I snip up, right? That is all from a gift from God, right? Each aspect of that, right? But God has also gifted me with some knowledge and understanding of the algorithm of how to make a good TikTok video. So like reach out to people who know how to do these things well, right? Like I would say I'm horrible at YouTube, right? So I've hired someone to be my YouTube coach so that I could make better YouTube content and glorify God through, hopefully, if he wills it, a bigger YouTube channel.
So it's okay to want to get big, but the rationale needs to be to glorify God, and you got to work at it.
And you got to work at it, right? You can't just say, hey, I want to be big, and just like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Just like anything you do, like you can't say, hey, I want to be a good soccer player, but not go out and pass the ball 100 times in the middle of the summer when it's 100 degrees outside. Like,
but it's okay to stream and not want to get big.
100%. 100%.
Everybody, right? We all said
100%.
maybe, which means yes, Ferris. Because I've heard the opposite, right? I've heard like if you do it, then the only standard is that you have to do it to get big, and I'm like that seems wacky. The parallel for me is young guys who want to preach. I get a lot of that now. I get even more of that now. I get young guys who are like, man, I want to preach. I want to preach. And I'm like, oh, great. Yeah, you want to preach? You think you have the gift of preaching? Like, awesome. Like, let's talk about how you work toward preaching. And there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of work in scripture. There's a lot of work in exegetical work of research. And then your early preaching is actually teaching in really small environments and then preaching in youth on Wednesday night. And all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of people that don't want to preach anymore because they literally thought, I want to preach means you're going to put me up in front of your big church on Sunday morning. And I was like, oh, you do? Oh, man, yeah. I love you, brother. That's not how that works, right? There's work. There's work that we do in order to exercise and develop that gift, in order to correct, in order to train, right? There's a lot of work. So it's just, in some sense, it's the same thing. And it's okay to want to preach and exercise a gift and not want to blow up. It's not okay to want to be the guy who's going to preach the Billy Graham, revival, but never work at it. Like I'd be like, that's unwise. That's foolish. That's foolhardy.
And then another thing, I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this. Is just like, if I don't know about you guys and how you guys got into preaching and leadership and stuff like that, but when it came to me, like I had so many people in my life say, hey, like I see you should preach, and I go, nah, I'm good. Like it's not something I desired, right? Leading a community was never something I desired. Maybe for some people that's been something God has placed on their hearts, but rather to me, it's been a constant prayer of, Lord, like I don't want to do these things, but if you do call me to these things, like change my heart and prepare me as if I'm supposed to be there.
Let me
I don't know
answer
about
that.
you guys, but yeah.
Ferris, give me the screen for a minute. Let me give you a little story. Yeah, let me give you a little story. So I'm a pastor's kid, and both of my grandfathers are pastors. And so growing up, I grew up in a really really tiny churches under the poverty line my entire life. And the one thing that I was not going to do in my life was become a pastor. The last thing I'm ever going to do. And so high school, like I begin to kind of run from the Lord, and I get done with high school and I go to college at 17. I'm out of the house, out of town, like I'm getting out, and I'm as far from Christ as possible. So when Jesus finally saves me and I'm in my 20s and I go back to church, I want to glorify God and I want to serve God, but I do not want any part of ministry, leadership, or pastoral work, any part. And then what happens? God convicts me and pulls me into, just beats me over the head with, "You're going to lead a adult Bible study." And when I realized what he was calling me to do, I was like, "Oh no!" And I did it. And of course, there's all this fruit from it. And I didn't want to do it, and I hated every minute of it. And I learned and grew. So all of a sudden, my pastors at that church, this is 15 years ago, come to me and said, "Hey, we would like you to preach on Sunday morning." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. That is no, that's not. No, that's not. I'm
Yeah.
just a guy teaching a Bible study." And they're like, "Oh, and they're working with me. And next thing you know, they throw me up there because they're like, "We really need you to do this." And I'm horrible at it, by the way. Like, you want to see bad preaching? Watch my first 20 sermons, and it's rough. And they work with me, and next thing you know, they take me through an ordination process, and I get ordained, and I'm an elder, and I'm just going like, "How did this happen?" And then at some point, they call me, like, "Well, you're a pastor now," and my wife is like, "I'm a pastor's wife." Like, "Well, you said this wasn't going to happen." Like, and I was like, "It's not supposed to happen." And
Yeah.
so I end up like bivocationally, I'm a pastor. I get called to another church, and I'm working 40 hours a week in pastoral ministry as an associate pastor of a church. It's just blown up and gotten huge. And I'm working my full-time job, and I'm like, "Man, how did this happen again?" And it was reluctantly every step of the way. And it's God pulling me into areas where he's working, and I realize I gotta be obedient and run after him. And I'm like, here's the great thing: I'm an associate pastor. I rarely have to preach. I get to do ministry work. I get to be obedient to God, and I don't have to be in front of the limelight. I can stay back here in the shadows. And then my best friend and freaking senior pastor quits and leaves. And guess who's in the pulpit? And I'm like, "You have got to be kidding me." Now I'm preaching full time all the time, and I'm the guy who has to be in the limelight. And I look back and I look at every step of the way. I don't want to do any of those things.
Yeah.
And God's like, "This is what you're doing. And
Yeah.
son, you can either join me in my work, or
Yeah.
you can go live a fruitless life on your own, and you choose." And it's those Jonah moments where I was like, "All right, this is what I'm
Yeah.
doing." So all I'm telling you is, I'm not telling you have to preach. I'm telling you that you can him and haw however you want. And if you're being obedient to God and you're pursuing him, you're going to do the thing that he wants you to do.
Amen to that. Too many people too many people ask me the question of like, "Hey, I don't know what God's plan is for my life." And I'm just like, pursue God earnestly, be faithful to him, be in the scriptures, be around people who love Jesus, and I promise you at the end of the day, God's not going to you're not going to walk into the gates of heaven and God's going to go, "Did you not hear me?" And it's like, "God, I tried. I'm so sorry." Like, no, like
no.
he's going to make his will known to you
Yep.
Mhm.
for the vast majority of it. And maybe some days we're gonna have like a 90-10, 80-20, like, are we really supposed to do this, right? But like for the vast majority of it, like, we're gonna know what God's will is for our lives simply because we're gonna be in the scriptures, we're gonna be faithful to him, we're gonna be faithful to a community of believers, and from there, right, you're gonna obediently walk in what he's called you to do.
Amen. Next question. What are the dangers of streaming? Heels.
Ooh,
Dangers. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I can think of a few right off. I think the dangers of streaming is kind of the dangers of putting yourself in any kind of limelight, like we're talking about right now. Pride can obviously come in. Temptation will obviously come in. I think that you can start out with the most honest intentions, like you're gonna go out and you're gonna serve God and you're gonna make disciples, and very quickly you can watch 100 videos a day on growth and start to do it for the numbers, right? And you can start missing the people that you're there to minister to, and you start seeing them only as numbers and names. And I think that there's a lot of issues you can run into if you start chasing the wrong thing or you lose focus on why you're doing the things that you're doing. And I think that's one of the biggest things is trying to make sure that you stay focused, like in the midst of growing, because I absolutely think that we should be growing, and you should absolutely be putting in the work. And you absolutely need to be doing these things, but at the same time, you need to stay focused on why you're doing it. And I would say, like, for people that like, I don't know, males in particular, I know that it's probably all the way around, but I know that we've seen as like with like celebrity pastors and stuff, like there is a lot of temptation out there, and there's a lot, that I feel like the enemy just goes directly after that in one of our weakest points. So I think that like we have got to stay in the word and stay focused on God and be ready to handle the temptations that come, and also be really smart. Like, it's not, I mean, in my opinion, and this is me just at church and everything, I don't really have a private conversation with a female without my wife present. I don't have private conversations in Discords with females. That's just a rule that I've put out there. If we have a conversation, I will refer that to someone else of the same gender, or we will have it in a public room. And that is just me guarding myself. But yeah, I absolutely think that there's a lot of ways that attacks can come and issues that can come in as you grow as well.
Ferris?
I think probably one of the biggest dangers of putting yourself in front of anywhere with a message is sometimes fame or prominence will take you places that your character is not yet prepared for. Like what Cross was saying earlier, like, right, he had that first video, right, couple thousand views, 8,000, 10,000 views, then hundreds of thousands of views, right? Like what? Like I think your profile is like 5 million total views now, right, Cross?
Total views is 28 million.
28 million. Okay, 20. I'm sorry, guys.
5 million likes, I think.
5 million likes.
Slanderous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slanderous. Forgive me. Right, but there are places that, or there are moments when we put ourselves in front of others, and especially with how our world consumes content right now, that if we are not prepared for that, like to be prepared to be thrust in front of many other people, our character will not be able to handle that, and we will not be able to parse out what is righteous or what is godly or what is the most edifying to the Lord, or how do we navigate these difficult things? Because when you gain a platform, just like what Dan was saying with these young guys who want to come and preach on your stage, which you are called to guard, like, right, like people are going to want to come and associate themselves with you, so you have to be prepared for that. And there are real dangers of just, I don't know, like your character has to be ready for the limelight of
How do you know if
whatever
your character's ready, though?
I mean, you got to have accountability through the relationship of other men and women that you trust in your life that can keep you grounded and focused on the Lord, on who your identity is in, and where your hope is in.
Chris, what are the
Yeah,
dangers?
so. So I wrote some down while you guys were talking because something sparked some stuff in my head.
Yeah.
I think number one, especially when you go full time and you start to hire people to work for you, is the pressure of like feeding yourself. Luckily, I'm not married and I don't have a family, but like I couldn't imagine that pressure of like making sure there's food going into your kids' mouths and food going in the tables of others, like just through content creation. That itself is burdensome. It's something that you got to run to the Lord in. Another thing I said is, and I think you guys could potentially attest to this at some point in your lives, but I'd say probably about 2 months ago, or a month, maybe 2 months ago, the Lord really put on my heart that I had actually been ignoring growing in my own relationship with the Lord for the sake of trying to grow other people's relationship with the Lord. Right. So like my heart is to encourage people through content creation and through streaming, right? And a deal I've made with myself is I'm not allowed to hop on stream before I read my Bible. Well, there was times in which the mornings would get busy, meetings would happen, and I hadn't been in my Bible yet, but yet I hit that go live button, right? So I had rejected my own growth with the Lord so that I could make sure I'm serving other people. And I think that's one massive thing is like you want to serve other people. God's called you to serve other people, but then you you put on the back burner your own relationship with the Lord, and it's like pouring water out of an empty glass, right? Like there's a day in which you're just gonna get tired and exhausted, right? And then third, I think, where's your joy? When you are a streamer and it starts to have these high moments, right? What's next to come is the low moments. And where is your joy in those low moments? Obviously, I think it's okay to be frustrated and disappointed in moments, right? That's okay. But where's your real joy in those moments? Like the thing that gets you up the next day, right? Like if you have a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, right? When you wake up that next month, that next day, that next week, are you encouraged and are you ready to go and serve the Lord? Or are you like, oh, is this going to happen again? Right? Like where's your joy in that moment? Another thing is what happens when you slip up, right? As a proclaiming Christian, right? What happens if you say a word you shouldn't say? right? What happens when you make a mistake in your real life, right? Where do you bring that in? Like, how real do you get with other people?
Mm-hmm.
How much of your life do you let in to others, like relationships, family, kids,
Yeah.
family? Like, what does that look like, right? That's different for everybody. And I'd say the last thing, and Ferris, you said something along this lines is of like, are you prepared for this? And going back to like these streamers who happen to be Christians, who have these massive platforms. Something I think about with some of my friends is if they were to proclaim Christ, I could just imagine the DMs that they would get from other people that day that would basically build up all these what we would call somewhat rational arguments about why they believe something different than them. And I don't know if they'd be able to handle it, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't have people in their lives discipling them. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like one of my goals and my hopes is a friend of mine back in college, he shared with me a verse of he in Isaiah. I don't remember where it is. I'll be honest with you guys, but basically his heart behind the verse was that he wanted to be the person behind the person that was doing the preaching, right?
Mm.
He wanted to be the person behind the person that was making an impact for people. And I was really encouraged by that. And my question that I'm asking myself today is, what does that look like to be the person behind the people that have the large audiences, right?
Right.
How in the world do we get behind those people and share with them Jesus and teach them how to read their Bibles and stuff like that? Because there might be a lot of people out there that understand who Jesus is and what he's done for us, but they don't know how to read their Bibles. They haven't been discipled, and they need that before they're ready to meet thousands of people with the gospel, because they're going to be faced with opposition and they need to be prepared for that.
So, Chris, I call that being a Jonathan. You know, like in ministry, I feel like there's a lot of people that want to be David. Everybody wants to be King David. I want to go slay Goliath. I want all the glory, right? But nobody wants to be
Yeah.
a Jonathan. Jonathan's just the guy that was actually the king's son that didn't view being king as the thing that was worthy of going and doing, but rather that because God had anointed someone else, would walk with that person and support them.
Yeah.
Like who wants to be the trustworthy friend? Everybody just wants the notoriety. I That's good. I would say this. I think there's some stuff that you see in any celebrity status, whether it's streaming or anything else, because streaming is about if you're building this audience of people, and that audience now is how you get paid. There's an inherent danger to your popularity being linked to your income.
Hmm.
And so I think there's going to be a massive need for great accountability. The problem in the pastoral ministry of celebrity status, if you go look at celebrity pastors in the United States, if you look at celebrities, politicians, there's this idea that we live one way publicly and we live a different way privately, and that there's a gap between how I would live with my friends or my family in real life and
Hmm.
how I would live online. And I think for a Christian, that is one of the most devastating things that you can have. This idea that you have two lives, this idea that there's almost a line between sacred and secular. I reject that fully. I think it's incredibly dangerous. I don't think anyone navigates that well at all. My handle is my name. If you go to Twitter, my full name's on there and a link to my church that I pastor at. Well, you can dox me in a second because I've given you all my information about where I live, what
Right.
city I'm in, what church I'm at, what job I'm at. You can call my elders because I just don't believe in having two lives.
Hmm.
The problem as you get really famous is you have to maintain something that you start. And if you start something where, man, I live like this publicly, but in real life I'm vulnerable and there's issues and I'm struggles, but I don't talk about that in this other life, man, I don't know how to navigate that well. In fact, I'm incapable of doing it really well. I would just be a hypocrite all the time. And so I just years ago just decided I hate this idea. I'm just going to lead with my failures. I'm going to lead with my struggles. I'm going to lead with my weaknesses. And I'm going to stumble all over the place and be like,
Hmm.
yeah, I messed up. That's my bad. I'm like, that's safer than thinking you can maintain two different versions of yourself. Accountability, I'll just say this about accountability. I think the hardest place to find mentorship is actually in pastoral ministry. When you become a senior pastor or a lead pastor,
Oh, so hard.
finding a mentor feels impossible,
Hmm.
and it is a real struggle. They did a survey I think it was Christianity Today. It talked about the number of senior pastors that in a survey that say they actually have close personal friends, and it's a very small number. It's like 30% of senior pastors believe they have a close friend. Like it's a tough isolating ministry. If you're going to be a streamer and you're going to push for an audience, You better have accountability that loves God, loves the church, and loves you in that order. And you're third on the list. Because if they love you more than those other two things, they're not gonna be honest with you. They're gonna tell you some stuff that they probably is not really accurate, or they're not gonna tell you some stuff they should be telling you because they want to please you. And so, like, when I'm looking for accountability, I'm looking for somebody that loves God first, loves the church second, and by the church, the body of Christ, right? Not a specific church, and loves me third. But they still have to love me. So somebody that loves God and loves the church but doesn't love me, I'll be honest, their criticism doesn't go very far with me. I'm kind with them. Hey, thanks for sharing, brother. And then I'm gonna go back to my accountability and be like, what do you think about this? Because they haven't earned the trust in my life, and I'm not actually certain they love me. And critics are a dime a dozen. It was I think Roosevelt that said, "Man, if you're not in the trenches with us, you're the voice of a critic doesn't go very far unless you're going to be in the trenches."
Mhm.
All
You
right,
gotta
those
go.
are. Go ahead, say it.
I mean, you gotta have people that are willing to go to war with you. When I mean with you, I mean not only like alongside you, but also against you, right?
Yes,
Like to keep you
Yeah.
grounded.
yes, yes.
Probably the hardest thing that I experience with having like true close friends is I get one of two people. Like I get the first one is like the, oh gosh, the pastor wants to be my friend. I don't know if I'm spiritually capable enough to be their friend. Ugh.
Yes,
Mhm.
I don't
just
need
a
you to
dude,
know
man.
everything I know. I just need you to like be a bro and love
Right.
Jesus, right? And then I also have the other guys who like have never been a moment in pastoral ministry, and they're just ready to coach me to be a better pastor. And I'm like, okay, it's
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
wonderful,
Thanks. Yeah.
so wonderful, love it.
But to me, accountability is somebody that you've given the green light to call you on stuff. Like they have
Mhm.
to have full access. So my accountability can say, this is concerning, and I have to go, okay, okay. If you say it's concerning, I've given you a right to ask any question, to bring anything up. I've told you the things that I struggle with. So I've told you all of my temptations. I've told you I'm a workaholic. I told you I struggle with anxiety. I told you if I feel like drinking is going too far and I'm not controlling it well, that I had to go to my house and I had to empty all the alcohol in my house because I was concerned about it. I'm telling my accountability partners that, and I'm being like, you need to ask me. I'm telling them when I feel like my wife is saying, "Hey, I don't think you're doing a good job." I'm telling my accountability partner that my wife said that, so that they'll ask me again about it. Like they have to have full reign
Mhm.
to my life authentically, or they're not really accountability. I'm just kind of
Mhm.
feeding them the information I want them to have. So like it's got to be full visibility for it to be accountability. And in fact, I think it's that person has to be so intimately involved relationally in your life that either they're local to you or you're on some sort of stream with them like 5 or 6 days a week. But like my accountability partners have my wife's phone number. So like if they're not exactly sure if I'm telling the truth, they call her. Yo, this is what I'm
Mhm.
hearing. I mean, full reign.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just thinking about this as someone who one of the reasons why I still play video games is because of isolation as someone who just like has been in a secular environment, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
either can go into a secular environment which I don't enjoy of after games going and partying and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
or I can go on hop online, right? But I'd say the closest people, my accountability partner, right? He works during the middle of the day, so he's never able to watch stream, right? And the only information he hears about what's going on in my life and stream and stuff like that is coming out of my mouth, right?
Right.
Obviously, there's one part of like, hey, it like I have to speak truth, but rather there's also this like other side of the coin, that another perspective in which like I can never see, right? Because I'm not the viewer,
Right.
and maybe I just don't handle the situation well, and I never got to see that, right?
Yeah.
And something I'm just thinking about is how in the world, and maybe I'm just asking this question for myself, but for others who maybe have been in the situation of how do we get into that point where we bring in other people into that space to hold up those points where they're not being seen, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um and then also at the same time, like, you always have to be really careful, because I've gotten hundreds of messages over the last year, right?
Yeah,
Saying,
yeah.
hey, like, I want to be a part of the ministry. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be a part of your life, right? And in the first 3 months, I took a lot of that up, right? Very, very few of those people are still around in any sort of capacity.
Yeah,
in order to, in any sort of capacity, let alone being able to be a big part of the ministry. So like, it's because of the consumer nature culture, right? There's just a lot of people that come in and come out and jump in the pool, get the sweat off them, and then hop back out, right? And it's
Church
I don't
too, by
know.
the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that at church too,
yeah,
right? Show up in the pew. I'm gonna do all these things, Pastor. Gone in 2 months. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Here's-
just a couple things though, real quick. Like Jesus had circles, right? So he didn't have. He had 3 really close disciples, and we see them in the garden. He had 12, what we would call apostles, but those weren't his only disciples, because we actually know his disciples were numbered around 80 to 120 disciples that were following him. And then he had crowds. So we see 4 concentric circles of people that Jesus is discipling at different levels of intimacy. And I would say in ministry, it's the same way. I have crowds of people around me, some that are attenders, some that pop in the church, some that I know in other areas, but it's thousands. And then I have disciples, people that are actively going, look, I want to be discipled, but they don't have the same level of commitment, but they're volunteering, saying, I want to be discipled. And you're going, oh, okay, like I get that. There's 120 people that are telling Jesus they want to be discipled.
Yeah.
But he's got 12 disciples. That's a small number, and only 3 of them are intimately close enough that I would even call them like accountability partners. So Jesus, the Son of God who lived in perfection, had 3.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
like
a big
that.
number, right?
Yeah.
It's a small number, but I would say we're always searching for a person that can do this in real life. You may not find
Yeah.
it quickly,
Yeah, for sure.
but I'm looking for somebody local that will take me to coffee, is looking at my mannerisms, is watching my body language, starts to know my tics. Is like, yeah, I don't think you're being honest. I mean, literally calling me on stuff, and I'm like, what? I'm not. Like sometimes I don't even know, right? I'm looking for that. It takes a long time. It's going to take some false starts, but I'm looking for that. I don't know that you're going to find many of them in stream.
Yeah, 100%.
You might, but I think you're searching for that. The power of the local church is that I can't replicate online. Is that in the local church, I have to learn to love people that are unlovable. I don't have to do that online on Discord. I just ignore the people that are unlovable. But in local church, it's true. Come on,
It's true.
Just don't respond to them. But in the local church, when I'm sitting in the pew, that person that's not very like I would normally sit somewhere else, and I have to learn to love them. That is the transformative work of the local church.
You know what?
15:1.
You want to know what we call them at my church, Dan? We call those people EGRs. EGRs. Are you ready for this, chat?
Extra grace required.
100%.
Nice.
100%. I mean, yeah, it's really
sense.
hard. You're talking about accountability, like cross, like whether it's streaming or in life or anything like that. It's like for me, or at least my experience of this is I'm a hyper aggressive personality. I'm gonna go after people, right? I'm gonna go after people. And what I've learned is that, like, for me to really have close connection, I have to have that reciprocated. So like, I'm not just the one always calling. I'm not the one who's always like sharing or anything like that. Like it's a conversation of accountability or just connection, right? Like it's a necessity. And it's super, again, for like in a pastoral sense, it's hard to get that because I got to get over people's assumptions of what it means to be a friend of a pastor. Like that's one of the hardest things in the world for people to get over. Like, oh, you're real. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to life. I didn't do this all my life. I have a history.
Yeah.
But like having like going after people and having them like respond and go after me, like you're talking about like a guy who isn't present in your streaming or anything like that. But there's a necessity of your requirement to be able to share with him the things that he doesn't see. And then also a necessity for him to be able to ask about the things that he doesn't see.
Yeah.
Like, right. Like, hey man, I caught 3 TikTok videos in 5 minutes of stream. Man, how'd it go? Man, what'd you think? Or like, hey, I need you to text me every single day. Did I get on before
Yeah.
like
Hey,
before
that's Ferris. I told you this
stream, right?
story, right? I
Yeah.
told you the story about the young guy. He got saved. He's in my small group. He's only been saved like 3 years. He's dating a girl. He's probably going to get engaged. And he's like, I'm really struggling. I've never had a relationship in my life that wasn't a one night stand.
Mm.
It's 25. So I've never had a relationship. Every relationship I've ever had in my entire life is a one night stand. And we're like, and we're like, what do we do? Like, how do we help you? And he's like, I need you to text me every morning and ask me where I spent the night. 4 guys in the group. Every single morning we text him a text. Where'd you spend last night? Where'd you spend the night? Where'd you spend the night? For a year until he got married.
Did you text him the day after he got married?
Nope. Enjoy it, brother.
Aw.
That was, you
Enjoy it,
missed
brother.
you missed an opportunity.
Nope. I ain't interrupting anything, brother. Uh-uh. 1 Corinthians 7:3. It's my life verse. Look it up.
Oh my gosh. I mean, but
Go ahead.
even with like I'm gonna say like connected back to our subject, even with streaming, like right, like Christian streamers have people that connected to you, that speak into you, that can genuinely critique you, and you receive it. Like you have to have people in your life who are capable and willing for you to say hard things you don't want to hear. That you're going to go, this person is saying this to me not because they're trying to gain or destroy me, or gain from me or destroy me, but because they genuinely care for me, right? But these are also
So-
going to be the people who like celebrate you deeply.
Most of
Right.
my accountability partners are not like hanging out in my stream a lot,
Yeah.
but all the elders have know where and how I stream, and I have 2 elders that are pretty tech savvy that will pop in at various times, either into the GMA like this show or into my stream and hang out. And then I got about 5 or 6 youth from the youth department that, because they're on Twitch and they know their pastor streams, they're in my stream on and off. And like, if you want real pressure, be a pastor at a church where you know the youth kids are going to pop in and watch what you're doing. That's enough pressure for me.
That's why your
Oh, yeah.
your Tarkov guy is Russian.
That's why my Tarkov guy is Russian, brother.
Yeah.
All right.
On.
Last one. Chris, advice for the young guy that loves games and loves God and is trying to figure out if streaming is something God's calling him into.
Advice for the young guy, the young kid.
Loves gaming, loves the Lord.
Yep. I think the first question you'd have is why, right? I think there's a lot of people that see someone doing something like, oh, that's cool, I should do it,
Yeah.
and they don't ask the question why.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we should do in all aspects of our lives, right? Before we actually go and do something, especially these massive things that take up a lot of our time, we ask the question of why. We check our heart and see, all right, is this for us or is this for the Lord, right? Do we see someone's numbers and go, oh, those numbers are cool, I want those numbers, right? Or do they go, wow, he's impacting people, or she's impacting people, Lord's working, right? God, are you calling me to do this? Like, is this something you have equipped me to do, right? And I think if that answer ends up being yes, of like, hey, like this would be something I'd be doing for the Lord, then the next question I'd ask is, are you ready to work as if it's for the Lord? Because the amount of time it takes to be a content creator, in so many different aspects, from the small content creator trying to build really, really close-knit relationships to the big content creator trying to spread as many seeds as possible for the sake of Jesus, right? Both of those take so many different avenues, right? I know there's a lot of content creators that are a lot smaller that spend a significant amount of time in their Discord, right? That they're more focused on streaming and building relationships, right? Are you prepared to spend that amount of time, right? And then when it comes to creating content and trying to become a really good content creator for the glory of God and make Jesus known, right? Are you willing to put in the work, and work as if it's for the Lord and not for yourself? And I think those are the biggest things. And honestly, if the first thought is you see someone and go, I want to do it, probably you should pause for a second and check your heart. So
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Heels, we got questions we need to answer.
I got a few. I think we've actually hit a lot of them on our way through. And so if anyone had a question you want clarification on, resend it, because I'm probably going to skip the first couple because I really do think we hit those. But I will go to this one. Ken, I think we kind of touched on it, but Ken, I asked the question, is it a biblical requirement to share the gospel each stream? So I'll toss that one to Ferris first. What do you think? This is specific to each stream.
Is it a biblical requirement that you share the gospel in every conversation? No. No, I don't think it's a biblical requirement. I mean, I can chapter and verse, like can I say that? But I also think but here's the thing. I don't think it's a biblical requirement, but every conversation has an opportunity if you can seek to find it, right? Like appropriately. Again, I don't think it needs to be like what Dan was saying, that we don't need to just run up and like bang on somebody's door and just start yelling Jesus. But if you are open to the Spirit to be able to move you in a way to find those opportunities in every conversation, to be the gospel in action and in word, then find an opportunity to do it. Like it might be at the grocery store when you're in line. It might be on stream when you're playing a game. It might be like it could just be your shtick when you die in a video game, that you just go, but my eternity is secured somewhere else, right? Like that could be your shtick, right? Like, I mean,
I am gonna respawn.
Boom, 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 new body, heavenly, right? Guys, Lord forgive us for that.
Man.
But no, is it a requirement? No, I don't think it's a requirement. But you look at the heroes in the New Testament. They sought every opportunity that they could to proclaim the hope of Christ for those who didn't know it. Now, obviously, we're looking at the champions of the gospel in the New Testament. But if that's our example, then I think we at least try to strive to get there. But if you miss it, don't beat yourself up. Like, build that relationship, right? Maybe it's not appropriate. Build that relationship. Take time. Gain access so that when you do speak the gospel, it's not just hitting a brick wall, but it's actually sinking into something of a heart issue to where, maybe not the first time or the 100th time or the 1,000th time, but maybe the 10,000th time you have a conversation in genuine care, that, their heart of stone cracks, and that's where the Lord starts to lead. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, gospel as the explanation of what Jesus did for us. Requirement? No. But every conversation has an opportunity to be gospel minded in it.
Yeah. Like it. Do you guys want to chime in on that? What are your thoughts? Agree, disagree?
I mean, I think what I would say is, particularly if you view your stream as a ministry. And I think that there's a question as to whether or not you do or don't. I mean, I think for some people, they view it as just sort of a casual thing that they like to turn it on and say hi to friends, and maybe it's a little bit different. So I think if you view it as a ministry, the standard goes way up. Like the amount of effort you're going to put in, the amount of time, the amount of hard work ahead of time goes way up. But either way, I think we should be prayerful about our interactions with people. And I don't just mean streams. So I would see no difference than like you're going to go out into a public space. You're going to go out and meet with some people. You're going to have an opportunity to go to, I've been in business and I've been a business owner for a long time. And I looked around years ago and realized, man, I'm like one of the few business owners I know that's publicly Christian, like that you could really, is talks about being a believer and talks about the Lord. And I realized, man, I have some influence. And so I was prayerful about interactions that I had with customers and with vendors, and just wanted to be sensitive to ask questions that would open the door to talk about the gospel. And I've gotten opportunities to do that with people over the years, talk to vendors, talk to customers about those things. It wasn't every conversation, but I was looking for it. I mean, I think the real thing is, are you looking for it? If you can go streams and not talk about the gospel, not talk about anything spiritual because it doesn't matter that much to you, I would just ask you, do you share the urgency of Christ coming again and a heart for the lost that we see in the Bible, because Jesus cares for them, man. Jesus is talking about leaving the 99 to find the one. Jesus is talking about the prodigal son, the father running to that son. I mean, there's an urgency for the gospel in the Bible that we're supposed to mimic. And I think that's the thing that should drive us. You may or may not have an opportunity to talk about the gospel, but are you attempting to connect with somebody and get opportunities? Or are you playing video games and calling it a ministry so you can justify more time to play video games?
No. I'd ask the question why, right? Like if someone I talk to someone and they're like, hey, like I just saw that they didn't share the gospel and they streamed for 3 hours, right? And I got the opportunity to have a conversation with them. I genuinely ask them the question, hey, like you're a Christian, right? Yeah. Could I ask you why you don't talk about Jesus or why you didn't
Right.
talk about Jesus? And if their
Right.
answer is, my hope is so that I could continue to build relationships with people so that when they're going through the dumps and they reach out to me through Instagram DMs, that I could then share with them the hope that's in me, then like, okay, then awesome, right? Like building that relationship.
Yeah.
I love it, right? For some people that might be just like, you know what, dude, I messed up today. I didn't, right? Like, or maybe for some people it's like, I don't know how, right? And I think that's for a lot of people who are Christians who happen to, or who are streamers who happen to be Christians, is they don't know how, right? Like nobody's ever discipled them. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's at the heart of it. It's like the church has failed. Like
Yeah.
the big C church, especially in America, has utterly failed at discipling people. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are really quick to point the finger and say like, oh, that guy's a Christian, but he didn't share the gospel. Is he really a Christian? And maybe it's like, hey, that guy's a Christian. He didn't share the gospel. Maybe it's because the church has failed at building him up so that he could share the gospel in a bold way and be prepared for the answer for the rejections that may come for it, right? And that's where my heart is, because I've seen a lot of people, like I'll be honest, like I've seen Christian Twitter, right? Like Christian
gosh.
Twitter, right?
Phew.
And
The closest thing to Jesus there is.
right, like it's so edifying, right? And
very
Edifying.
and I just I have so many friends that I've met that would proclaim themselves as Christians, right? That are larger streamers, but they don't really know what it means to be a Christian, right? They believe in Jesus, they believe that this guy lived, died on the cross, resurrected from the dead, but they don't really know what it means, right? And the reason why is because they haven't been discipled. And my question to people is like, how do we then, like, instead of pointing the finger, how do we then try to figure out a way to walk alongside them, to be the Jonathan to them, and build them up and point them to Jesus and help them grow in their faith? Because if it wasn't for someone discipling me and teaching me how to read my Bible, then I wouldn't I wouldn't be here, right?
Right.
And instead of someone pointing the fingers at me like, oh, you're playing soccer and you're not doing it for God, you're not even a Christian, right? Instead, he just walked me through the scriptures, let the scriptures speak truth and build me up. And then I just progressively like, okay, like soccer isn't about me anymore, but rather it's about building relationships so that when someone asks me, hey, you're the third string goalkeeper, you're not even playing, but yet you work your tail off and you're doing really, really well. How are you not mad? It's so that I could say, oh, because my hope's not in this whole soccer thing, but it's rather in Jesus.
Mhm.
Right. And maybe that's where we could be that, like, the mindset isn't like pointing the fingers to see like, hey, are you sharing Jesus enough, right? But rather, all right, so if they're not, and they are Christians and they're a little weak in their faith, how can we then figure out a way to build them up in a way that's edifying to their spiritual walk and edifying to the church, hopefully?
Yeah. I just say this about, look, we're in a new medium, right? Only in the
Mhm.
last 100 years have we even had, like, from radio to TV
Yeah.
to phone to streaming to social media. So back up 100 years ish, 115. Every conversation we were having, if it wasn't a letter that I mailed you, it was a face-to-face conversation. Every conversation was
For
face-to-face.
sure.
And so there was real weight to my words because I was standing in front of you when I spoke to you.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, in merely about 100 years, we're so disassociated relationally from the people that we're talking at or subtweeting or whatever. Like, so much of our speech today, because it's via text or via social media post or whatever, is not intentional. It's haphazard. We're so haphazard with our words. Jesus says in Matthew 12:36, Jesus says, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. Christian Twitter? Bro, that's going to be if you're behind that guy in line waiting to talk to Jesus, it's going to be a minute.
Yeah.
Every careless word.
That guy in line.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Sorry, you can't
Every
come in yet.
careless
We have
word.
3,000 tweets. still to go
I
through.
got right. That guy's been on Twitter for 15 years, brother.
Uh,
Like every careless word, every tweet, every Facebook post, every chat in Twitch, every careless word. Like be intentional with your life and with your words.
mhm. I some of some streamer actually said that wasn't even like necessarily speaking it about Christ. Someone asked him, "Hey, what do you think about the Kanye situation?" Right? And in that moment, he goes, "Honestly, bro, like it doesn't really matter to me because we have these two different spheres: the sphere of influence and the sphere of concern. Right?
Yeah.
The sphere of the concern is the things that we actually can't impact, but the sphere of influence are the people in our lives that we can impact that day. Right?
Yeah.
So one thing that like I've been sharing more of like, hey, like let's worry less about the sphere of concern, right? Like, is Twitter going to come down tomorrow? Cool, I don't really care, right? Like, but rather the people that really who can I truly influence and impact for this for the Christian perspective is for the sake of Jesus today, right? Who is that person? And I guess that'd be the question instead of just like looking at someone like that you can't get in contact with and just like whatever, right? Being frustrated. It's like, oh, instead, like, how can I impact the people in my day today and have my mind focused on how do they know Jesus better rather than the person that I'm never going to be able to have a conversation with.
It's good. Heels, other questions?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, make sure you tag me. We can probably throw a few in before we end. So, but yeah, I think
Let's
that's
do
it.
this. Let me give you guys each just a moment to kind of talk to people about where they can follow you, where you either create content or interact,
Yeah.
via social media platforms and Discord. Ferris, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me all over the internet as Fair Storm. I am on Twitter. I'm not on Christian Twitter, like on purpose.
Like,
I
On
envy you, brother.
purpose. Yeah.
I envy you.
When I mean I'm not on Christian Twitter, like I follow people that talk about Christian Twitter drama, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, and this is great that I don't know. I don't care to have full theological debates in 240 characters.
Amen.
Do not want to do that. But you can follow me all over here on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And come hang out. I hope that I will be back to making regular content here as the new year starts. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Part of the whole thing is are you prepared and to do those things? I was prepared, and then we had a third kid, and then I was not prepared.
then I was not prepared.
Yeah, I didn't sleep for 5 months after that kid was born. But it's fine. We're here. We're here. We're alive. I'm technically awake, I think. But I'll be glad to get back soon.
Yeah. Chris, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, YouTube, Cross the Crown Gaming, Instagram, Cross the Crown Gaming, I think TikTok, Cross the Crown Gaming, and then Twitch, just Cross the Crown. And just don't follow me on Twitter. I hate being on Twitter anyway, so just don't worry about that. But
So that's not how it's spelled.
That is
on the
definitely not
screen.
how it's spelled.
that is absolutely not. As much as I look at that and go, now that instead of having like talk about creating gospel conversations right there, people read cross the dude. How do you even say your name? So it's Cross the Crown. Why do you name? Oh, so you ever heard about this guy named Jesus who died on the cross but then stay dead? Now king and all that stuff. But
Hey.
yeah.
It'd be an SEO nightmare, but it's probably available everywhere.
It's true. I mean,
just saying.
Twitter Cross the Crown isn't available just for everyone that knows. The cross, the number 2, and then crown is not available. But that's the only platform it's not available on. I don't know.
Wow.
That's the only platform my name's not available either. Had to have stupid TTV or something in there.
Yeah.
Just DM Elon. He's responding to everything right now. I don't know if that man has been off his phone in 3 weeks.
He hasn't even left
agree.
Twitch or Twitter headquarters, right? He was sleeping there.
Yeah, he was
he just
sleeping there.
lives there.
Yeah. Heels, where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me right here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Dr. Heels. We play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. Lately, I've been getting back into New World and having a lot of fun with that. But also, I have 2 YouTube channels, youtube.com/ what is it? I actually got my name with the little handle thing. It's at
Dr.
no,
Heels?
do at youtube.com/thatboldlife. There you go. I'll figure out the actual handle later. So that is my Christian reaction channel, and then the Dr. Heels channel is youtube.com/Dr. Heels, where we do design videos and tutorials for streamers. So check me out in any of those places.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for me, guys, you can find me at the Dan TH3DAN on Twitter and on Twitch, YouTube. Actually, most of my Christian content in terms of like preaching and discipleship and podcasts comes out via my church's YouTube and Spotify accounts, and that's the Resurrection Church. And so, if you're just looking for Christian content, Bible studies, preaching series, things like that, podcasts for leadership, you'll find all of that at Resurrection Church. I think I have that. I'll put it in chat. But if you want to interact with me, I love talking to people on Twitter and try to be as reasonable as possible. Twitter's not the best place, the safest place for folks. Man, probably not even for Christians either. But I enjoy it. I really like Twitter. I use the mute button liberally. It helps a lot. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So sometimes we do something called the soup box where we try to summarize, and I just was kind of interested where this conversation would go and kind of how we would take it, especially having a guest on. Hey, by the way, Chris, we just really appreciate you taking the time and joining us and sharing some knowledge with us.
It's fun.
So yeah, no soup box tonight, guys. Take from this what you will. Lots of varied perspectives. I think what I want you to hear as 4 guys that love the Lord, who all have a testimony of being redeemed by Jesus and having just life change happen because he's so good, is there are ways to impact the world and to glorify Christ through streaming, but there's also some dangers. And you have a choice whenever you're in the public eye. Are you building a platform or are you building an altar? And our job with our lives is to be living sacrifices and build altars, not platforms. So that's what I would tell you. Any closing thoughts, guys, you want to share with everybody?
No, I really like what you
I
just
think you
said.
nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What that guy said. Go with that.
Awesome.
Ditto.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. You could follow GMA on Twitter. You can follow GMA on our YouTube. You may be on there. We're streaming there live. We're also on Twitch if you're on the other platform. And we have a Discord. We would love for you to come in and join our Discord, different gaming channels. And I just love an opportunity to connect with you if you enjoy gaming and you have questions about Jesus and who this guy is and why we keep talking about him. We'd love to talk about that too. We're going to raid somebody right now. So we're kind of taking a look here at Twitch and seeing if we can figure something. You got
Also,
an
I was
idea?
going to add or ask it. This is the finale, right? Was that correct?
So
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we're on our
it looked like
breaks
the
now.
last episode we had on
This'll
the
be-
agenda. Yeah, I think we had 12 episodes for the season. So
Yes. So I think this is the finale. So we'll be taking a little bit of time off.
probably the
I-
holidays, yeah.
Yeah, through the holidays and stuff, and then we'll be back. So stay tuned. The GMA Twitter is the best place, and the GMA Twitter is good. Yeah, and what you just said is what I had typed in that I forgot to send. So your choice.
Got it. Ferris, can you do the raid? You have
I
mod
am
access?
trying to.
We'll find out in a second.
Mm-hmm.
If I see it pop up, then I'll know it worked.
Ike says we
Oh,
don't need
wait,
a
hold on.
holiday, so there we go, guys. No finale.
Oh,
Sorry,
oh man. Actually,
don't need a holiday?
this has probably been the toughest season yet of
dude, it's been rough.
having availability on Sunday nights with what goes
Yes.
on at my church on Sundays. This has been tough.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah. Hey, for real chat. Hey, be praying for all the staff, or all the church staff that are part of PAD, and I'll tell you why. Because all of us over the last 3 months have hit one of the busiest seasons in all of our ministry areas.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to quite literally every single pastor that comes on here and shares their Sunday evenings, because I guarantee you all of us are up before many of anyone in chat. And we're in bed way later.
Mhm.
Oh,
way
yeah,
later
it's
than you should
wild.
be. But it's okay. We do those things because we love.
Mhm.
I mean, we love this.
And then I
opportunity
stream
to be able
Sunday
to tell
nights
people about the
because I
Lord.
just really don't like myself. Clearly. And so, yeah.
Yeah, why
I'll
do
be
you do
going to
that?
sleep like 3 a.m.
You don't sleep anyway.
Why?
Anyways, right?
I don't sleep much. No, I drink a lot of coffee. Good Lord gave me
Bruh.
caffeine. So,
I get up super early almost every Monday because I coach some classes. So, man, Sunday nights can be tough.
yeah.
Awesome.
See,
Awesome.
I-
We've got Raid ready to go.
Let's go.
Oh, nice. Okay.
All right, hey guys, when we jump over here, this is PT Stress. Make sure you say hi. Give him some love in chat. He's a really great dude. Dad, I think he's got 3 boys. They all game with him at different times. He's a really cool
that's
guy.
cool.
So say hi from
Yeah,
us.
sure.
Awesome. Raid is started, guys. Make sure you go say hi. Thanks so
Love
much
you
for
guys.
hanging out with us. Pray. Hey, last month was Pastor Appreciation Month. Go tell your pastor you love him. Okay.
Yes.
Go.
Wasn't that last month though?
It was,
Yeah.
but still do it.
You
Yeah,
might have
tell
missed
them
it.
anyway.
Bye, guys.
They appreciate it.
Bye.
Hey.
Raid's on and
And done.